Coming up on Bridge City News, the Alberta government announced today that it is investing almost $2 billion to get Albertans working again. Our country's Chief Medical Officer of Health has an update as to how Canada's battle against the coronavirus is going. And today is Vimy Ridge Day, a time to remember the thousands of Canadians who sacrificed their lives to help turn the tide in the First World War.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. The Alberta government is investing almost $2 billion to resurface roads, repair bridges, and restore schools. Government officials say it is to get thousands of Albertans working once again. The funds will come from the 2020 capital plan. Premier Jason Kenney says the goal is to get Albertans working as soon as possible.
Because of the huge collapse in energy prices, I anticipate that Alberta's recovery will take longer and the downturn will be deeper. That is why our government is focused on our immediate action to save jobs, to create jobs, but also our mid and long-term plan for economic recovery. Part of that involves the relaunch strategy I outlined for Albertans this week, so that we can begin to reopen businesses and get people back to work by relaxing social distancing, public health orders as quickly as possible while protecting Albertans from a potential second wave of the coronavirus pandemic.
Our province's Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Dina Henshaw, says there were 28 new cases of COVID-19 today, along with 3 more deaths. There were no new cases in the South Zone, which means our total remains at 26. Henshaw says 151 staff and residents at long-term care facilities have now been infected with the virus.
Earlier this week, we tightened rules on visitors to these facilities to help protect residents from COVID-19. I know it is difficult to no longer be able to visit loved ones who reside in these facilities, but this measure was necessary to keep everyone safe. I encourage Albertans to look for other ways they can still stay in touch with friends and family who may reside in these facilities. For example, I heard about one long-term care resident who just celebrated her 101st birthday. Her family made signs and brought them to show through the window of the facility while waving and smiling to celebrate her birthday, all the while keeping appropriate physical distancing.
The City of Lethbridge has extended its state of emergency to 90 days due to the coronavirus. Emergency Services Manager Greg Adair says he's hopeful it will not have to be extended after that time frame. Lethbridge Mayor Chris Spearman says bottom line, the city needs to keep its citizens safe, especially as the Easter long weekend approaches.
The holiday weekend will present an opportunity for you to do your bit and stay home. While you may want to observe your faith and family traditions during this holiday season, I urge everyone to celebrate these traditions with those in your own household.
We're examining each and everything as things, I guess, progress, and we're trying to eliminate those touch points or the group gatherings. So any of those things that come up, we're looking at it as they come forward. I can't speak to anything in particular, but as things come forward, we look at them, we try to evaluate them the best we can, and then we look what we should do moving forward.
City officials also offered an update on the story we brought you about the peace officer who was allegedly coughed on by someone who claimed they had COVID-19.
The individual was brought into our detention facility, and he was processed under the same guidelines that we would under our pandemic strategies. Proper protective equipment is put in place for the member as well as the subject to ensure there's no further issues with transmission. Our employee would go through the same processes that any other individual who believed they may have come in contact with somebody who is exhibiting flu-like symptoms or potentially COVID positive. He did the self-assessment, followed the HAS guidelines as well as the City of Lethbridge guidelines as far as making sure he was okay.
RCMP and community peace officers can issue fines up to $1,000 for those who violate a public health order. The courts may administer higher fines for more serious violations up to $100,000 for first offense. Taber police are looking for a suspect in connection with an armed robbery in Vauxhall. Police say a suspect in disguise entered a bank carrying what is believed to be a rifle yesterday afternoon around 12:30. The suspect demanded cash from an employee at the bank, took the money, then took off in a vehicle which was parked close by. There were no customers at the bank at the time of the robbery. Police supplied some pictures of the suspect they described as 5 foot 6 inches tall. They ask that you do not approach since the suspect is considered armed and dangerous. If you have any information that can help police, call Crime Stoppers right away at 1-800-222-8477. Lethbridge police have charged a man and a woman with drug trafficking offenses. It centers around drug activity at a home on 15th Avenue North. Police observed a vehicle leave a home to conduct a drug transaction, and upon returning a short time later, 2 people were arrested as they exited the vehicle. During a search, police found more than 65 grams of methamphetamines, $2,500 in cash, and a knife. The street value of the meth was around $6,500. 34-year-old Stephen Klein and 22-year-old Angel Andre, both of Lethbridge, face charges including drug trafficking. The Colehurst Volunteer Fire Department was called to several homes in our community Thursday, but not for the usual reasons. With the lights flashing, firefighters were dispatched to help celebrate the birthdays of children in the response area who were following the physical distancing recommendations. BCN's Loris Alexander was there for this very special birthday drive-by.
Hi Kensley, we just come by to wish you a happy 7th birthday.
7-year-old Kensley Ferguson wasn't expecting to see a fire truck with lights flashing on her birthday.
I'm happy that the fire department is offering to do this for people because, the kids, they're trying their best to understand what's going on and why they can't have parties and stuff.
On April 4th, the Colehurst Volunteer Fire Department posted on Facebook that they would drive by houses in their response area to wish kids between the ages of 4 and 12 and people over the ages of 75 a happy birthday.
We've been keeping our social distancing as well, so we will have 3 or 4 crew members get into the truck and we will go to the address, and over our PA system we'll wish whoever's birthday it is a happy birthday and hit some lights and turn on some sirens for them, and we offer the family to come out and take a picture and beside the truck if they'd like.
Caden Seaforth, a firefighter for the department, says it's a great way to connect with the community.
We're here for the community and we're here to help. Sometimes we'll drive by your car pretty fast, go into a scene or something, but for us to slow down a little bit and say hi and talk to someone in this time when there's not very much social communication, I think it's a great time to do it.
The Colehurst Volunteer Fire Department will turn on lights and drive by any home to make up for the disappointment that might come with not having a traditional birthday party. For Bridge City News, I'm Loris Alexander.
This is Easter long weekend. Easter dinner is typically an ideal time for family and fellowship. Now, due to COVID-19, many families will not be getting together. One restaurant is taking over the cooking for those who might be stressed and delivering it right to your door.
So yeah, this upcoming Sunday is Easter, and we're actually doing turkey and ham dinners on Saturday and Sunday. So we're trying to offer that to everybody. We're also actually throwing in carrot cake as well with that. Just again, a little bit more comfort to what's going on right now. I feel like I'm really fortunate right now because I do have the customer support, and they're allowing our family to feed their family. And they've been doing that for 40 years plus. So for me, I'm really excited that I'm still getting that feedback, and I'm still getting the support from the customers that they're getting us to help feed their families during these special days.
Luigi's North has also teamed up with a movie mill and is selling large bags of their signature popcorn. As we celebrate Easter this weekend, a Lethbridge man rescued from alcoholism shares what the season really means to him.
He paid the penalty for me on the cross that I would have eternal life through Jesus Christ to meet God the Father. It's not a religion, it's an absolute relationship that I do have with the Lord. I'm not perfect, I'm in the flesh.
Now, according to the nonprofit group Charitable Impact, Lethbridge is the 7th most charitable city in the country. Of the 7 leading communities, residents have given an average of up to 5% of their income. Lethbridge Mayor Chris Spearman spoke about our city's community and commitment to giving, even during the most difficult times.
I think that's great, and I think we're generally viewed as a giving city. I just look at the people who've come together. The organization Help Seeker has 4,000 members in the city of Lethbridge. There's 300 people volunteered to drive to deliver goods and services to individuals who can't leave their homes or have issues for various reasons. I think that's great.
There are more than 85,000 registered charities from across the country. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, many businesses have made the hard decision to close their doors to the public, and that includes bottle recycling depots in Lethbridge. But as Jeanette Rocher reports now, Green's Pop Shop has found an alternative way to help you get rid of the bottles while helping out a good cause.
With the bottle depots closed until further notice, tripping over our empties in our homes is becoming the norm these days. But for Miles Godlinton, relief couldn't come soon enough.
We like our wine, and we're going through a lot of bottles because we're in lockup, you know.
Green's Bottle Depot has made a deal with the local food banks to pick up all our empties that are clogging up our homes.
The full retail value of the refund is coming straight to the food banks, and we work in partnership all the time, so it's easy peasy for us to split the proceeds between the Lethbridge Food Bank and Interfaith Food Bank.
And as soon as word got out this week, Daniel McIntyre of the Lethbridge Interfaith Food Bank says it's been non-stop.
We weren't sure how often we were going to have to call for pickups, but on day one, we needed a pickup. Day two, we needed a pickup. So we're hoping this will continue for a while. It's a great revenue source for the food banks and a great way for the community members to do something simple to help out others.
I think it's a great thing. I'm happy to drop these off and give them to the food bank. It was nice of Greens to do this. And hey, every little bit helps.
For Bridge City News, I'm Jeanette Rocher.
The Helen Schuler Nature Center is offering families a unique chance to connect with nature by bringing in several new COVID-19 friendly programs. As Micah Quinn explains, the Nature Center is keeping social distancing and isolation top of mind for these new programs.
The Helen Schuler Nature Center has closed its doors to the public due to COVID-19, but that doesn't mean families can't get outside and have fun. The company has instituted programs like the Story Walk.
And so right now we have a story it's a poem by April Pulley, and it's beautifully illustrated, and it's called Thank You Earth. And so the poem is really kind of a love letter to our planet. And as you walk and read the poem, it unfolds in the forest around you.
Putnam says she knows families still want to get outside and take their minds off of staying home.
Trying to offer that in a way that we can help to encourage people to go outside and to connect with nature if possible, just because it's such an important and really good outlet for helping to manage and reduce that stress.
Taylor Hecker is a program leader at the center and says that they have started a YouTube channel, and he does videos for the Outdoor Adventure Club.
The idea is to focus on local wildlife for kids that are not in school right now. But it's not something that's supposed to be meant to just be watched on YouTube. There's always a outdoor activity component that goes along with it.
Hecker says these activities are safe for families, and the center is still following COVID-19 preventative measures.
Trying to reinforce that social distancing. All of our activities we tried to spread them out over a long area so that people aren't clustered in one thing.
The Helen Schuler Nature Center is encouraging families to get outdoors during this Easter weekend and enjoy all that nature has to offer. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
You may have noticed that BCN's Jeanette Rocher has been MIA, and there's a big reason for that. Jeanette went on her honeymoon. She and her hubby went on a cruise just before coronavirus became a pandemic. Jeanette joins me now at the desk. Let's talk about that journey, Jeanette. That must have been something, just before it actually became the pandemic.
You know what, you're absolutely right. We left the country on March the 5th, so just before it became this crazy worldwide thing. It was pretty much over in Asia. Nothing really hit North America too badly. So left on March 5th, went to Puerto Rico for 3 days, got on the cruise ship on March the 8th. They did a little health screening before we all got on the ship, and we were good to go. We were cleared. Then we went sailing for 7 days, hit 5 islands. It was great. And then on our last day, when we were coming back into port at San Juan, the cruise ship was stopped by the pilot boat at the port of San Juan, and they informed our captain that they were not allowing any boats to dock at the port of San Juan without a 72-hour quarantine.
Right.
It was our ship, which was the Norwegian Epic, and the Royal Caribbean Freedom of the Seas was right beside us. So our captain made the executive decision to continue on to Florida, which would put us in Florida 2 days later on the Tuesday, the 17th. So this kind of created a mini panic on board because everyone's flights were out of San Juan, not Florida. We were planning on spending 4 more days in Puerto Rico. So we had a hotel room booked. They charged us for the entire 4 days, which sucked.
Wow.
So because we couldn't get a hold of them, there was no phone service on the cruise line. The Wi-Fi, nobody could get on their cell phones. So they had an internet cafe on the ship. The line to wait for a computer was about 7 hours.
Wow.
We had heard accounts of people waiting in line for 7 hours just to try to rebook flights, rebook hotels. One really nice person at a kiosk working on Norwegian let me quickly email the hotel just to let them know, hey, we can't get off the ship, we won't be there. But they went ahead and charged us anyway.
Did the crew actually talk to you about the fact that, hey, there's a pandemic right now?
You know, the only real warning we got, well, I mean, we all were aware of it before getting on the cruise, and they did give us the little health screening. They took our temperature, and we were good to go. Other than that, as far as like the food service goes, we weren't allowed to serve ourselves at the buffet. They were very diligent in making sure everybody washed their hands. There was hand sanitizer everywhere on board the ship. You couldn't walk more than 10 steps without being able to Purell your hands, basically.
So you and Darren came back from your honeymoon, wonderful, your
Yeah.
newlyweds, but 14 days in isolation. Did the marriage survive that?
We did. We did survive it. Actually, it was kind of like a little extended honeymoon for us, the quarantine. I know that sounds funny, but I kind of feel closer to him now than before. So it was fun. And then we had those couple days in Florida too, which we weren't expecting. And it was really weird. Cocoa Beach was still spring break mode. People playing volleyball on the beach and everything. And then Orlando completely shut down. No one on the freeway. Theme parks shut down, so it was bizarre. And then even trying to like connect with Air Canada, we had to wait on hold for 4 hours before connecting with an agent.
Wow. And
it was okay that we were able to change our flights from San Juan to Orlando to get back home to Calgary. And I know it was an adventure.
An adventure is
Yeah.
right, and we're so glad to have you back. Welcome back.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be back, Hal.
You bet. Canada's Chief Public Health Officer, Dr. Theresa Tam, is urging Canadians to keep following physical distancing measures. Tam explains what she expects will happen after the first wave of the epidemic and what measures will still be needed once the number of cases has decreased.
I just want to emphasize that even once we're past the peak of this first wave and on the downward trend on the other side of the curve, it will be equally critical to keep up with our control measures. If we let up, new chains of transmission will take off in our highly susceptible population, and the epidemic will reignite.
Today is a very special day as we remember the sacrifices that were made by many veterans from the First World War. Today is Vimy Ridge Day. On the morning of April 9th, 1917, on a battlefield in France, a deafening artillery barrage began. All 4 divisions of the Canadian Armed Forces were brought together for the first time in war. By the end of the day, as they reached the heights of Vimy Ridge and won the battle, 3,598 Canadians lost their lives and more than 7,000 were wounded. In a statement earlier today, Alberta Premier Jason Kenney wrote, "As we recall the triumph at Vimy Ridge, let us not forget that the soaring marble monument that stands there today is dedicated to the 11,285 Canadians who died during the 4 long years of the First World War and who have no known grave." There's some small victories in regards to the COVID-19 pandemic. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has been moved out of ICU and is recovering from the coronavirus. There's also a 103-year-old woman in Italy who's recovered from the disease. Ada Zanusso is encouraging thousands of others in her country to keep the faith. She's recovered from COVID-19 at a nursing home in northern Italy. The country has been one of the hardest hit in Europe with more than 143,000 cases and over 18,000 deaths. But it's so nice to see another person recovering from COVID-19. A nice spring day in the Windy City today, but cooler temperatures are on the way just in time for the Easter weekend. Full weather details are coming up. We had lots of sunshine again today. Jeanette Rocher is here with a look at the forecast. Jeanette, it was a beautiful day, but will the mild weather continue into the Easter long weekend?
So happy to be back doing the weather for you guys. Now, Thursday had a beautiful spring-like day. We were pretty much the hot spot in Alberta with a high of 16 degrees. Much different story though for Good Friday. As we wake up on Friday, we're going to see clouds mixed with rain, and that rain's going to be turning into snowy periods for late afternoon on Good Friday. High of 6 degrees, and a low overnight on Friday of -5. Now looking ahead into the rest of the weekend, Saturday's high, we're going to be seeing periods of snow with a low of -4, -12 overnight. So it's going to be chilly conditions on Saturday evening. But then we're going to wake up on Easter Sunday. We're going to see lots of sunshine, and the high that day is 0. The low that night -9. Looking ahead to the rest of next week, lots of clouds on Monday with a high of 1. Then the temperature is going to climb to 8 degrees for Tuesday and a possibility of 12 degrees for next Wednesday with a mix of sun and cloud. So we're seeing a trend. We're high, then we're going to go low, and we're going to go back high again. And speaking of highs, the average high this time of year, 12 degrees, average low, -2. The highest temperature on this day was recorded back in 1996. It was a lovely 25 degrees. The lowest temperature was -15, and that was back in 1990. The sun rose at 6:51 a.m. That's Thursday morning, and it set at 8:15 p.m. Now, let's take a look at what's happening for our Good Friday weather across the nation. Looking to the West Coast, they're going to have a beautiful day. Lots of sunshine, 14 degrees expected in Victoria and Vancouver. Edmonton's high, 4 degrees with a mix of sun and cloud. Calgary, 1 degree high for Friday. They're going to be seeing a lot of precipitation, much the same as Lethbridge, starting out with the rain and turning to snow later on in the day. Friday's highs across Saskatchewan. Saskatoon's high 3 degrees, 8 degrees expected in Regina, mix of sun and cloud. Scattered clouds also expected over in Winnipeg, with their high being 3 degrees. Now looking further east, we're going to be seeing some snowy conditions in Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, also mixed with that rain as well. The weather just can't decide what it wants to do. It just wants to be wet. 5 degrees the high in Toronto, 4 degrees for Ottawa, and 7 is the high on Good Friday for Montreal. Fredericton's high, 2 degrees on Friday, snowy conditions. Speaking of snow, Halifax can be expecting quite a bit of snow on Friday, 15 centimeters to be exact. 4 degrees is their high. Charlottetown is looking at a wind warning in effect for 4 degrees, and lots of precipitation also happening in St. John's. There you go, that is your weather.
Today's weather highlights are brought to you by Dan's LA Carpet Cleaning. Residential and commercial carpet and furniture cleaning since 1989.
In an effort to keep the supply chain moving during the COVID-19 pandemic, the province announced today that it is temporarily modifying some regulations for truck drivers. These changes will allow commercial truck drivers to more easily deliver necessities like medical supplies, groceries, and fuel during the coronavirus crisis. Some of the changes include being able to work for longer periods of time provided all safety conditions are met, apply for fewer overweight permits by increasing the limits on weight loads, be exempt from road bans, and be exempt from municipal bylaws that restrict the hours they operate and park. The province says unless another deadline is specified, these changes will remain in effect until the ministerial orders end around August 14th or 60 days after the public health emergency order ends. Stats Canada has come out with its labour force survey and how COVID-19 has impacted the labour market. Employment fell by more than 1 million people in March. The exact number was 1,011,000. The employment rate, or the proportion of people aged 15 or older and who were employed, fell 3.3 percentage points to 58.5%. That's the lowest rate since 1997. Overall, the total number of Canadians who either lost their job or had their hours cut increased 2.1 million to 3.1 million people. Alberta lost 117,000 jobs last month alone. The national unemployment rate for March increased 2.2% to 7.6%. That's the largest increase since 1976. The Economic Recovery Task Force in our city has issued a survey to hear directly from business owners about how the COVID-19 crisis is impacting their business. The 2-minute survey also asks how business owners have had to modify their business to adapt to the pandemic and how long the recovery process will be after the pandemic is over. Chamber President Cindy Voss says the extra information being collected will help shape policy decisions and pinpoint exactly what businesses need. The survey can be found on chooselethbridge.ca. Many businesses are struggling right now during the COVID-19 pandemic. Business owners are also finding it a challenge to adapt to challenging times. Chris Young is the general manager of Martin Brothers Funeral Services here in Lethbridge. Among the challenges they face is not allowing more than 15 people in at a time during a service. He says that makes it tough on families.
One of the largest restrictions that we're dealing with from the government right now is that restriction of limiting our services to 15 people. And for a lot of families, that's difficult. A lot of us, just with our immediate family, especially in southern Alberta here, can be more than 15, let alone having extended family and that social support from friends.
Yong will describe in more detail how the coronavirus crisis has changed the way they do business. That's coming up after business news. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 240 points on the day to 14,166. The Dow was up 285 points to finish the day at 23,719. The S&P 500 was up 39 points to 2789. The Nasdaq was up 62 points to 8153. Oil was down $1.90 to $23.19 per barrel. Natural gas was down 4 cents to $1.75. Gold was up 35 cents to $16.8408 an ounce, and silver was unchanged at $15.44 an ounce. Wheat is at $245 per metric ton, barley's at $241, canola's at $462, and corn is at $249 per metric ton. Live cattle were up $1.18 to $94.58. Feeder cattle were down 35 cents on the day to $120.20. Lean hogs were down 33 cents to $43. The Canadian dollar was down slightly on the day at 71.55 US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, the City of Lethbridge has extended its state of emergency to 90 days due to the coronavirus. Emergency Services Manager Greg Adair says he's hopeful it will not have to be extended after that time frame. Lethbridge Mayor Chris Spearman says, bottom line, the city needs to keep its citizens safe, especially as the Easter long weekend approaches. The COVID-19 pandemic has impacted many businesses, including funeral homes. Up next, an interesting chat with the VP of the Alberta Funeral Services Association about how the virus is impacting how they do business. That interview is coming right up. The COVID-19 pandemic has forever changed our world in many ways, and one way is the way we now make funeral arrangements. Today's guest is Chris Yong. He's the General Manager of Martin Brothers Funeral Services in Lethbridge and as well VP of Alberta Funeral Service Association. Chris, welcome to BCN.
Hi there, thank you so much for having me.
Chris, funeral chapels have had to make some changes over the last little while, ever since the COVID-19 restrictions have kicked in, banning any gatherings larger than 15 people. What changes have you had to come up with when it comes to conducting funeral services?
Well, great question. Funeral service has been obviously greatly impacted by COVID-19. And like you mentioned, one of the largest restrictions that we're dealing with from the government right now is that restriction of limiting our services to 15 people. And for a lot of families, that's difficult. A lot of us, just with our immediate family, especially in southern Alberta here, can be more than 15, let alone having extended family and that social support from friends. So number one, that would be the major change. And number two is social distancing, or physical distancing as it's been evolved to be called. So we need to keep a space between all of us. It's about 2 meters essentially. So
have some of these changes put any added stress on some of your staff?
You know what? Not so much the changes. The changes are affecting our families more than the staff. Any changes that are affecting the staff are just in regards to our own kind of personal care in our families at home as we're being impacted by potentially bodies that are infected with this disease.
And let's talk about some of the mourners, some of your clients. What kinds of responses are you getting from mourners now forced to attend funerals online through streaming technology?
Yeah, basically, some people obviously are able to integrate into that streaming technology quite easy. And for other people, it's just more difficult. Some people just don't have those capabilities at home. We're also offering recording services, both video and audio for people, if that works. Some families are just outright choosing to postpone services or just do something private and intimate as an immediate family and then do something more public afterwards. And I would say that's probably what we're seeing more interest in at this time than the actual streaming of services.
Well, how are you actually helping seniors that want to maybe attend a funeral virtually? Because I know my mother, she can't stand FaceTime, she doesn't Skype. So a phone call? Like, how are you helping seniors out in that regard?
Yeah, so basically, some funeral homes and some institutions have the ability to have call-in services where you can hear audio. That wouldn't be as consistent as a video streaming would be, you know, just based off the logistics. It's almost older technology now. But unfortunately, there are some people here that are being affected and aren't able to mourn in traditional ways like we've liked. And we've all had to compromise during this COVID-19 crisis, and unfortunately and very sadly, that's one of the things that's taking place.
Some of the stories we've been following as well, Chris, on Bridge City News is that in Italy and Spain, two of the countries in Europe which has been negatively impacted by COVID-19, so many deaths, more people are going to cremations. Are we seeing something similar here in southwestern Alberta?
So specifically in southwestern Alberta, I would say no. Those families that are wishing to have burial take place, and that's still taking place. And we're doing those as more intimate gatherings, maximum of 15 like we talked about out at the cemetery. We're still doing services in the funeral home for those families. A lot of times cremation or burial is a very personal decision for people that they've made and expressed to their families a lot of times beforehand, and are committed to those. So we haven't seen that. I can understand, given those additional pressures like Italy and Spain, that may be something that they're looking at. But even then, the infrastructure of crematoriums aren't able to keep up in a lot of those areas with cremations as it is. So disposition as a whole is something that's being looked at. It's something that we've worked and talked with the Alberta government about as the association, and what that might look like if that came to Alberta specifically in those kind of volumes. So,
how about mausoleums? How popular are they still? I know with some cultures, people want to be above ground, not below ground. Are you seeing some of that here too?
Yeah, so in southern Alberta here specifically, there are not mausoleums provided by the municipality, especially in Lethbridge. Calgary, Edmonton, places like that, you are going to see those options available. Just given our demographic here in Lethbridge, it hasn't been something that's come to the forefront yet. There's been lots of talk about it, but not necessarily something that's offered here.
I understand that some families are postponing funerals until the ban on large gatherings is lifted. Do you know what percentage of people are waiting to hold a larger celebration of life service?
Yeah, good question. The majority of families are actually choosing to postpone. And like I mentioned, just doing something more intimately as an immediate family, and then having plans to follow up to have a, larger, more public celebration of life.
Chris, do you think we may see a bit of a bottleneck for a time with so many services being scheduled once the ban is lifted?
Unfortunately, I think that is the inevitable. Just the volume of families that we are serving that are choosing to do something. I mean, it's innate in our human experience to need to share that time of mourning together, and having friends there to hold you up, and having family and all your family there to hold you up is extremely important. And I mean, that's something that almost like not a case study because we know it, but it's something that we're really noticing now, and it's causing a lot of issues with grief. So
many people feel it's important to have some kind of a viewing or a wake of some kind the evening before the actual funeral. Are you seeing families stagger the visitation times for this? Perhaps one group of 15 at 7 o'clock, another at 7:30 in order to accommodate larger groups?
And that's exactly what we have to do to fit within the regulation. So you would have to have families that are able to understand that this is unfortunately all we're able to do, and then we work within that model as best as possible.
Are some families having real issues with that at this point in time? What are you hearing from some of your clients?
Our families, of course, are upset by it, but I mean, everybody for the most part seems to be quite understanding. I mean, this is something that transcends normal day-to-day life by nothing we've ever seen before. So everybody for the most part comes in, they already for the most part understand physical distancing, they understand things aren't going to be the same, and that expectation level, I think, is under, most people get at this time. So,
experts say that touch is such a vital part of the grieving process. Hugging somebody, crying on someone's shoulder. How are people handling the grieving process on the day of the funeral? Are they using Skype, Zoom, or FaceTime? I mean, people want to be able to hug and touch each other, but you can't.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just another component here that's making things dramatically more difficult for the families that we're serving. So, those family members that are living with each other and things, you're still able to see a little bit of physical contact there. But even then, it seems strained. It's just generally strained. Everything's just different at the gravesides. And there's an element there that, just hurts us at a level of our soul for our families that we're serving.
What about in the days and weeks following the funeral grieving? I mean, that takes time. People are already lonely, being isolated during that time, but now even more when they need others around them, now more than ever. What suggestions do you have, Chris, for people to really cope and grieve effectively right now?
Yeah, so that is really at the heart of what we're dealing with in funeral service right now is grief. And grief is basically the end or the change to any kind of relationship. So, not just a death. We're currently, all of us, we're grieving our friends, we're grieving our jobs, we're grieving going to the grocery store. Everything has changed so much, and your body simply reacts the same to any kind of grief. So not only is there that grief that we're dealing with, now enter a loss, which is so profound, and it really just creates additional layers to that. So what we're saying, and the message to families and anyone going through this is don't isolate your grief. Really lean on family members that are within your home. Lean on friends. Don't try your best not to end up in a situation where you're holding all these feelings in and not talking, because simply that's just it. And if you're a friend to somebody or a family member to somebody that's experienced profound loss and bereavement, just be there. Just lend an ear and let them know that, you know, anything that they want to say, they're welcome to say to you, and that you're just there to listen.
Chris, I wanted to chat with you a bit about a new trend developing. It's holding a green or environmentally friendly funeral service. What is different about a green funeral? Is it true that maybe the body is buried without chemical embalming?
Exactly that. So green burial is something new to Alberta specifically. Lethbridge here, our Royal View Cemetery, run by the city of Lethbridge, is the first green burial cemetery in Alberta. Other provinces, BC, for instance, on Vancouver Island, it's been quite popular, and I think that's what they were looking at when designing this new cemetery. So exactly what you just said, basically, the process of chemically embalming human remains is something that will not be allowed within that section of the cemetery. Any metals on your clothing is not allowed, any kind of dyes or anything like that. So essentially you're looking at natural cotton fibers to a decedent that has not been embalmed.
Does the embalming fluid actually damage the soil? Maybe the nutrients of the soil? Is that why we're considering not embalming people?
You know what? That's a good question, and it's something I've asked and not necessarily had a good answer to at this point. We know that formaldehyde is the main chemical in embalming fluid, and it's biodegradable. So I don't know what part of the process they're necessarily concerned of. It's just when they made the regulations for green cemeteries, for the movement, that was one of the stipulations, as well as the areas where you're buried. So the cemetery itself, there's no memorialization individually above ground. So basically your interment would take place, and then the next person that passes away and wishes for green burial would be interred right next to you. So you can't reserve a spot or anything like that, because essentially it's about the memorial is the grasslands itself, not an individual placement of a traditional headstone.
So is there actually a specific location needed for a green burial? Certain areas of the cemetery?
So it's one section specifically in the cemetery that would be on the south end of Royal View Cemetery that the city's allocated for that, and had to change bylaws to fit within those parameters. So.
And this is something you were touching on earlier, communal memorialization as part of the green burial. Give me a little more detail on that, what it means.
Yeah, so basically what's meant by the communal memorialization is that when you're looking at the green burial section in Royal View Cemetery, you won't know that it's a grave, that it's a cemetery. There's no monuments or headstones, if you will, at individual graves. It's just going to be the natural grasslands that it's been ceded to. So they will have a community memorial, a wall where a small inscription can go, but the essence of the whole movement is that it's earth to earth, ashes to ashes, and dust to dust. And the memorial is the grasslands itself.
That's amazing. I mean, especially if you want to go see your grandmother, your grandfather, whatever. It's like, well, they're in this area somewhere here.
Green burial is very specific, and I would say certainly not for everybody. You know, it does have policies and parameters around it that we're not used to here. So it hasn't necessarily been for everyone at this point.
What kind of demand is there for green burials right now here in Lethbridge, or maybe some of the trends you've seen nationally? Where is it more prevalent, perhaps? Maybe in the bigger cities?
So I think demographics may play a part, or you know where you live. Like I know Vancouver Island, it is a little bit more popular. Here in Lethbridge, to date, I don't know if there's been a green burial. I know that our firm has not provided one yet.
Any final thoughts for somebody planning a funeral during this COVID-19 time?
Absolutely. Just number one, funeral homes and funeral professionals are here for you 24 hours a day. Nothing has changed in that way, and we're here to serve you and do our best. Number two is that things, unfortunately, are going to look a little bit different. As you can imagine, with physical distancing and just the amount of people that are able to attend the service, is different. And that's just one thing that we're all going to have to work together on and try our best to get through this.
So, like we said earlier, if somebody wants to have a funeral a little bit later, once the ban has been lifted, gatherings of 15 or more people, how long can you actually hold the body for?
You know what? It's an undetermined amount of time. I mean, funeral professionals and embalmers specifically here in Canada and North America are very, very well trained and on the leading edge. And I would say there really isn't a time that we can definitively give. But I know that people have been held in cares of funeral homes for upwards of a year or more, so without disposition taking place. Yep.
Okay, thanks so much, Chris. That's Chris Yong. He's the general manager at Martin Brothers Funeral Services in Lethbridge. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. You have a great day and stay safe.
It seems that our society's become such a busy place that we don't always find the time to connect with each other like we really should. Perhaps our communities have also become more dangerous than in the past, which may cause us to become a little less neighborly. Joining me now to talk about this at the desk is Blaine Higgin, a Lethbridge City Councillor. Blaine is also involved with a local group called Connecting Our Community Lethbridge. Welcome to BCN, Blaine.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm quite excited to be here.
Oh, you're more than welcome to join us here. Now, Blaine, first of all, Connecting Our Community Lethbridge, what is it all about and how did it begin?
Connect Our Community is just about bringing the community together. And it started, first of all, because of a concerned individual was sexually assaulted on the north side of Lethbridge. And some of the crime around that and just what took place was really left the citizens in that area with some concerns. So a group got together and decided they needed to make a stance and try to help what was going on and to bring the community together.
Now, I understand you meet every 2 weeks or so. What sorts of things are discussed during these meetings?
There's multiple things. We've had a great opportunity to connect with different individuals in the community. We've had the police out to talk about different ways to combat these crimes and not as being vigilant, but being able to make sure you call into the police. Call in on a regular basis. They're doing such a wonderful job. They want to know what's going on. They get a little frustrated, I guess, with the continual Facebook posts, etc. They don't monitor that all the time, so it's important to make sure that you call into them, and they've been doing a wonderful job. We're always welcome to different speakers to come on board. It's been great.
Now, your group has also had various struggles and issues it's had to deal with. Let's talk a bit about those.
Well, there's a lot of struggles for sure over the time, and you've probably noticed lately the page has been a little quiet. And it's concerning to a lot of people that were quite active, and the reason it's gone a little quiet is because it's been a lot of bullying and threats on that page, which is really frustrating. If they know the background and why that group is where it is, it's really frustrating to have those people out there trying to create havoc, I guess, and it's just not right. We're there for the right reason. I find that to be extremely important.
You know, Lethbridge has also had a real issue with the drug crisis, like a lot of cities across Alberta, especially in our park system. You know, some of the kids were accidentally pricked by some of the dirty needles, and that was a real issue. Was that brought up as well? And maybe the sense of anxiety and concern that it's been caused in our community here?
Absolutely. There's been numerous individuals pricked by needles, and one is too many. And that's another reason why this community group got together. And we've actually had a mother of one of the children that was pricked came and presented. And it's really unfortunate. There's the crime that is associated around that, and the concerns that those members are feeling throughout the community. Finding the uncapped needles, finding the needle debris, finding the needles themselves, preloaded needles that have been found.
And the kids are looking at the needles like, oh, this is something unique. A cool little toy, pop it in the backpack, bring it home, and mom and dad are like, what is this? Right?
That's exactly what happened, Hal. And that's really sad that could happen in our community.
Now, was this brought before City Council as well, and what happened?
It was brought before City Council, and we'd received emails of concern prior, and what had happened is I'd looked into this. I'd contacted the mother of one that had their child was pricked, and asked for the story. And I brought a resolution forward to council shortly after to not have the needles leave our consumption site in Lethbridge. That was what I thought would be a start to stop the debris from circulating throughout the community, in the parks, in the places that we go and share these wonderful times with our children, with our
playgrounds,
pets,
right?
in the playgrounds. That's right.
Now, for the most part, I mean, I think a lot of people who use the drugs. A lot of the addicts are shooting up at the supervised consumption site, but Blaine, sometimes they're not.
That's right. There's a lot.
There's
There's
still
a lot
debris
of,
in our city, isn't there?
There's a lot of times they're not, Hal, and the reason being is there's needles that are handed out continually from the supervised consumption site. So of course, if you're going there to use the drug of choice at the supervised consumption site, I believe that you should go there, and that's where it should be used. You shouldn't be able to pick up supplies to be able to leave and use that substance on the streets. Because if you're at the supervised consumption site, the opportunity to have a professional nurse, medical staff help you if there's an overdose is far greater than if you're somewhere else in the community where you don't have that assistance.
Now, many in our community argue that the folks at Arches and the supervised consumption site portion of Arches are doing a really good job. You know, they're doing well, they're instituting a lot of programs, they're offering the counseling and the services to help those who want to get off drugs, get off those drugs, the opioids, right?
Right.
But then the other people in our community that want to see it shut down or moved out entirely, which the UCP is considering right now. What are your thoughts, and how are you leaning when it comes to the SCS?
Well, you know what, it's important to have harm reduction. And I know I've got a few times where they said, Blaine, you support that site because you support harm reduction. That's not true. The current way that facility is being operated, I do not support at all. And it's the way that it is operated, I don't believe it to be the right way to be operated. And so for that reason is why I don't support that site. I do support harm reduction is one of the pillars for the continuum of care for these individuals that are suffering with addiction.
When you say you don't support the site the way it's being operated right now, do you feel they're being more enablers?
Absolutely, and I've stated that numerous times, and it's been, I've taken a lot of heat and threats because of it, and it's like I call it like a hamster wheel, to be honest with you. They'll come into the facility, they'll use their drug of choice, they'll leave, go on the street, get their to-go bag, if you will, go on the street. They could use there when they're down. They come back in, they reuse again. They'll leave, they don't have the money to buy the drugs, they'll commit a crime, they'll buy the drugs, they'll come back in, and it's a continual circle of crime and drug abuse. And for that reason, I just don't believe that these individuals are being helped the way that they should.
I was interviewing some folks around the Chinook Regional Hospital, some homeowners there, and they were saying many times from what they've seen, drug users would OD at the supervised consumption site, be brought to the Chinook Regional Hospital to recover after receiving naloxone, be released from the Chinook Regional Hospital, and then break into the cars and the houses in the neighborhood. Absolutely. You know, and a lot of those homeowners are quite frustrated right now. So what do you want to say to those homeowners?
Oh, you know, what can you say to these homeowners sometimes? It's frustrating. And if I could speak a little bit to the fact of how many times these individuals are revived because of the overdoses. And don't get me wrong, Hal, it's important. We need to be compassionate, but we need to understand the importance of using our medical facilities the way that we're supposed to. A prime example, I received a call from an individual whose husband was having a heart attack. Contacted the EMS services, and they were out of ambulances. And now, it's not for me to say that it was because of that exact reason, but we're in quite a situation here now with response to addicts throughout our community. If that was the reason, that's really hard to take. This individual was actually driven down by a family member to receive medical attention, yet is a taxpayer in our community, has done so much to support our community, but because and again, I'm not pointing at that is the only reason, but if we know how many responses come in because of those in medical distress because of drug overdose.
Do you think that the EMS is maybe spread a little too thin, perhaps, in our city?
You know, I think it's for the population, it's probably okay. And again, those stats there, I wouldn't be the right one to speak to that, but I think it's how often we're using our EMS staff for those drug-addicted individuals, and the services are spent continually on helping those, which again is very important, but it's 3, 4, 5 times a day. And you know, I wish we had more ambulances, but I wish we had less those addicted to the drugs, and more for the ambulance for those in the community.
We've had Lethbridge Mayor Chris Spearman on our show a number of times talking about the 4 pillars. It's not just the supervised consumption side, but it's the intox, the detox, the counseling, all of that's needed really to help those who want to get off of drugs, right? And the UCP they're going to be investing millions upon millions of dollars for more treatment beds. How much of an impact do you think that'll have here in our community?
I think it's going to have a great impact. We've advocated for this as council for years, many years, and unfortunately, the previous government that didn't come through. And so for 5 years we've been advocating. Now the announcements that have been coming out lately are making me so happy. It's the intox, the detox, the permanent supportive housing, and trying to distribute the funds to help these individuals that are suffering with addiction in the best way they possibly can. We all want them to get back into society. Again, we're compassionate. I say that word so many times, but we want them to be part of society. We want them to be able to become better and free from those addictions and live a sober life.
But what about those addicts that say, you know what, I don't have a problem, I'm good. I'm having a great time, I'm enjoying this. What do you say to them?
Well, addicts will probably have that attitude because most of the time I have been told that they're not speaking of a sound mind if they're addicted. And we need to help them to understand what is beyond a life of addiction. And I think with these extra services that we're seeing, and they're continually coming forward, and I believe there will be more coming forward to help those that are struggling.
Not long ago, there was a truck that went by, a couple of guys by the supervised consumption site, opened up fire with paintballs, shot some of the staff and the clients at the supervised consumption site, and acted vigilantism. You don't want to see a lot of that in our city. So what do you say to people who are that frustrated that they're pulling out their paintball guns and shooting people?
And we cannot condone any activity like that, obviously. That is something we don't want to see throughout our community. I think it gets to a level of frustration, and people are so frustrated that a city has changed so quickly in such a short time. I used to never lock my door to my home. Now that was a little bit, maybe
20, 25 years ago, maybe?
Yeah.
30 years ago?
Not
Not
even that long ago. We're talking 5, 7, 8 years ago.
Oh, I've been locking my doors for 20, 30 years.
But you know what?
I grew up in the big city in Calgary, right?
Yeah, see, and I come from a pretty small town, and so in order to do that, I never did. And now I'll get into bed and I'll go back downstairs to make sure, double check that the door is locked, as we had an instance with a very large machete, a fella carrying a large machete just a few doors down from me that broke into numerous homes. And so there's things like that are very concerning and alarming for our community.
The Watch program, working with the police, how impactful do you think that's been, and how helpful in our community here? The volunteers going around, making sure people get the help that they need, and that we feel a little more safe and secure right here in Lethbridge.
Yeah, I like the Watch. I do have a few concerns with the Watch. They can only do so much. They're to, I think, shuffle people around and make sure people are feeling safe, take them to their vehicles and stuff, which again brings back, we're not a safe community if we have to have that. But since we are less safe now than we used to be, having the Watch is offering that a little extra security to those individuals that are needing it. But again, a lot of time it's shuffling those again suffering from addiction from one place to another, and there's only so much authority that they have as the Watch. It's more or less to shuffle, and so it's somewhat concerning. But I do respect the drive and determination they have to try to make a community safer.
Speaking of community and a sense of community, Blaine, what do you think about getting to know your neighbors a little bit more? I talk to some people in different communities in Lethbridge. I've lived here 10 years, I've never met my neighbor. You've never met your neighbor, never talked to my neighbor? Just kind of wave and that's it. When I was a kid growing up, you get to know your neighbors, you'd have community barbecues, there was a stronger sense of community. Why do you think that's lacking these days? Are we just too busy?
I think that's part of it. I think we all live pretty busy lifestyles, but I think at times, and now it's the old cliche, you need to stop and smell the roses. There's time we need to stop. We need to visit with our neighbors. We need to have the community meetings. Get out, understand what the struggles that your neighbor have. And I've come from a background of my mom and dad always taught me about service and how important service is to serve others in the community. The more we serve others, it comes back tenfold, and you're not even expecting it, but being able to share what others may not have, and we don't know what some other people are going through, and so to be able to serve them, if it's take them some cookies, take them a meal sometime, just get to know your neighbors, because I think it's really important. You're right, it's not the way that it used to be.
And it's interesting, that's to a large degree what the volunteers of the Watch program are doing, serving our community, right? Because they're volunteering their time. Now, the Connecting Our Community group also does some acts of kindness. You've helped out the Ortega family, and in particular, a young girl who's been battling cancer. Tell me a bit about that.
We heard of this group that or this family, the Ortega family, who nobody ever wants to go through it themselves, let alone a child of theirs to go through. And it was a very big struggle, and so they had connected with Connecting Our Community, and it didn't take us very long to start pounding the pavement to try to help this family. It was amazing how quickly we were able to gather individuals together to help. Some of the things that were done is we were able to get together and create meals for this family, a few months of meals for the family, cards for, if it was gas cards, food cards, Safeway cards, whatever it was, to be able to help this family as well. Fix their vehicle. They had some concern with vehicle, and they're back and forth to Calgary on a regular basis for these treatments. But in the end, we also got 5 months of their mortgage paid by those throughout our community that helped with that initiative. So it's really heartwarming, again, the acts of service and what comes out from something like that.
Lethbridge City Councillor and part of Connecting Our Community Lethbridge, Blaine Higgin, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
On behalf of all of us here at BCN, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless, and thanks so much for watching.